Hello, my name is Greg Massi, and this is episode number 55 of The Color of Air, a podcast about the musical journey. And my guest this week is Marcus Dowling, my friend of over 25 years. We went to college together, we were roommates at one point. He was one of the people who started up Capital Wrestling, so was a big part of helping me get involved with that company. And I worked a lot with him during the years I was working with Capital. And this past year, I noticed that Marcus really has devoted himself to something that I think that's been kind of at the heart of all of the different lives he's led in his professional career, which is journalism. It's always been something he's been passionate about. He's been a writer for many years. He wrote for our school newspaper back in college. It's something he's incredibly talented at, and it's something that I've always admired about him is that he has this dedication to staying informed and being well read and being able to communicate these ideas. And so it was fascinating in the last year or so during the pandemic, seeing that he's been really making a push towards writing about country music, which is something he's always been a fan of. And I wanted to talk to him about his career and how this all kind of came about. And what followed was a really awesome interview and discussion about race in country music, because one of the things he's been trying to do with his articles and with other ventures he's involved in is really promoting black country artists, LGBTQ country artists, the kind of the not the norm country artists who have kind of been on the outskirts of the country music scene for so long, but really deserve to have a more prominent position in it. And so that's been a real big thing he's been involved with. He's involved with a organization called the Black Opry, which has been doing a lot for these artists as well. And to see him grow as a country music reporter, where he's now writing. He was writing articles for CMT. He was writing articles for the Boot, and now he got hired by the Tennessean newspaper as one of their Nashville country music reporters. And he's going to be moving to Nashville, Tennessee, and taking part in that. So it was fascinating, and I was anxious or excited to find out what's going on. And he was more than happy to go in depth with me on his journey, what started it, um, how it's been going, some of his future plans. Um, and yeah, it's really cool. And I thought, because I'm not a huge country music guy, um, and I don't know as much about what goes on in the Nashville scene, I thought it was important for me to be educated about this stuff that's going on that he's really promoting and reporting on. So there's no music today, but here you go. Here is my interview with Marcus K. Dowling. Enjoy. Let's get down to the nitty gritty. I've had
Yeah,
coffee.
man.
I'm ready to go.
Me too. I'm caffeinated. I'm awake. It's good. Let's go.
So you're gonna have to take me through this.
Oh, brother, I got you. Don't worry. I like sat down this morning and like thought about it. I'm like, okay, I need to like mention this. It's fine.
Okay,
Don't worry.
well, I always knew you were a fan of country music. That
Yes, of course you did. Like that was part of being my roommate.
Yeah, I mean that wasn't surprising, but and I knew that you were a journalist. You've been a
Yes.
journalist for what, 10 years now, 12 years.
It's almost 15 now, and I was, of course, like the commentary editor at the Cal of Providence. So,
Well, yeah, I meant
so no, I always tell people I've been doing this for 20 years, and that's like basically true.
so. Okay, so take me through, how did you parlay your journalism into country music?
Okay. So this is a pandemic story. As a journalist, back in '08, I had been listening to a lot of like the outlaw redo country of like Brantley Gilbert and Jason Aldean, because they were just making like trap records. Jason Aldean has this song called Dirt Road Anthem that like when I was on the road with like pro wrestling and stuff back then, like going to like little towns in Pennsylvania and stuff. Like we'd go to bars after the shows and like rehabs sitting in a bar and Dirt Road Anthem by Jason Aldean were like anthemic. So I was like, and these are cool songs. And I was just in those neighborhoods, I was in those communities all the time. So I was like, yeah, this is cool. Like I actually like I get it. Like I get the mix of like if I was from suburban Atlanta and I also like country music, I'd probably make music like this. And it just sounded cool. So when I wanted to start writing, I wanted to write about country, but somebody quickly told me, like at a bar once, that like that would be a stupid idea because I would never get anywhere. Because they're like, how many black people do you know in country music outside of Charlie Pride? And I'm like, exactly. Well, you make a good point. So at the same time, I was going to these like underground like dance parties in Baltimore and New York, just because it was like there were other places I was like at the time, and those parties were cool, like because you know it was the same thing. I guess it's all like a story about trap music, I guess. So it was like I'd go to these underground like dance parties and people like Diplo and A-Track and people like that were spinning, and they were not the giant, you know, massive names they are now, but they were like headlining DJs and they were playing like Baltimore club tracks and a lot of trap songs from like, you know, Bone Crusher and like those big like Atlanta rap records of the early 2000s in underground rave style dance halls. And I'm like, this is cool too. So I started writing about that in lieu of country because somebody told me that country can never happen. So as my career goes along, I'm always pitching country pieces, like always, like every year. There's certain editors that would know that, like, okay, it's CMA award season. So Marcus is going to have some story about some country thing that he wants to write about. And it's happened at Complex, it's happened at Vice, this happened at every stop along my journalistic journey. In 2017, I did a piece for Vice called When Being Black and Loving Country Music Got You Down. And that came after Charlottesville, because like I saw Charlottesville on TV and I was like reviewing a Florida Georgia line record for a friend of mine's podcast, another podcast that I was on. And I was like listening to that and then watching Charlottesville happen. And I was like, this is crazy. Like the mix here of like white guys making trap records in country while at the same time in the American South, there's like actual racism back on the rise. That's crazy. Like that doesn't make it that actually is problematic. So fast forward to right around like the end of 2019. So I burned myself out like spectacularly at the end of 2019. Like I always say like I guess like the last time I talked about this, I have a whole like screed about mental health. And a lot of community breaking in country is directly related to mental health. So I got burnt out really bad. Like I went to the hospital for like a week. Mm-hmm. You remember that? Yeah. It's like we talk about it. Yeah, like it's a thing. So I definitely like it was crazy. Like I like lost my mind for 7 days. Just the burnout of like trying to push everything that I was doing as hard as I could between like owning a professional wrestling company and starting a underground global dance party and starting like you know to really get some real traction as a journalist. I'd written for the Fader for like the second time. And that was the thing that was like a bucket list goal for me. So it was very stressful. And on top of that, I was like in a relationship. And then on top of that, it was like there was like a bunch of other little things going on. And it was just a crush at the same time. And it was like everything was succeeding. And the only problem when everything succeeds is that it begins to like creep in on your ability to like have peace.
Yeah.
Like, and so like imagine having like 7 things happening at the same time. that are like all going. And you were at Capitol, so like it was like we were looking at like global television distribution on like a weekly basis. It's like what the hell? So I lost my mind. And coming out of the hospital, like the first thing, it's funny. A friend of mine sent me a Yola, who's a British folk artist who's now based in America, lives in Nashville. She did a cover of Elton John's Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. And it was sent to me just as like a way to like occupy my mind. So I was telling my friends, I'm like, if you could send me any music that like doesn't make noise or doesn't involve like repetitive drum beats, like, I'd be really grateful. So she sent me the Yola, and she's like, I heard somewhere that you really like folk music, and I'm like, oh, I do. My God, I do. Like when I don't listen to stuff I listen to for work for years, I've always listened to like outlaw country or folk. Or when I was in college, I listened to the Carpenters, and this. Yeah, I listened to John Denver.
Yeah.
Because it's peaceful. It's literally peaceful music. So I listened to Yola Goodbye Yellow Brick Road cover, and it's really good. Like it's like spectacular.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, so and Yola's very much a Black woman. And I'm like, okay, there's a Black woman who's in country adjacent music making this. Huh. I can't like, and I put a moratorium of like 6 months on me for like going to like any dance venues and like any bright lights or noise. I was like, I'm gonna like lay fallow as a creative music. And this was perfect. I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm like, I might go to see like Yola play live. Like I might treat myself. I don't go out anymore.
Yeah.
Treat myself. So I saw Yola in January. So this is like 3 months after I got the cover, and I listened to it like every day. And I started diving into like and weaving through kind of like country and especially like Black women in country, because I was like, Yola can't be alone. And then I discovered this woman named Amethyst Kia. This woman named Leanne Giddens. I rediscovered Leanne Giddens. I kind of knew she was just from like being a member of Grammy, and she's like won a bunch of them. So there was also Mickey Guyton, who's a pop country artist. There was this album called Songs of Our Native Daughters, which was done by Smithsonian Folkways. And I have a very tight relationship with the Smithsonian, just from being in DC and also being a music journalist. So I put my hands on it, and I'm like, okay, this is cool. The thing about that record was that was all Black women like reclaiming the power of the banjo from white people who, largely invented country music with the help of the banjo, which was traditionally an African instrument that slaves used, for enjoyment, and when they were, stripped from their country and dropped in various American states, work for white people. So I was like amazed by that record, and that's an amazing record. And I was amazed by like the fact that like we were a place in the world where like somebody had allowed Black women to just like say whatever the hell they wanted on record, and it wasn't in like the R&B realm or like the pop EDM realm. So it wasn't like ratchet. It wasn't like Cardi B being like, "Suck my wet ass pussy."
Yeah.
It was like, well, Amethyst has a song that's on her album that she has out right now called Black Myself. And it's like, I want to stare at the woman that I love. I want to walk through the streets of America, and I want to do all this stuff because I'm Black myself. And it's like, stand up and be proud. I'm like, and also it's like, on top of this too, the country thing ties into me getting old. So like, I got old all of a sudden. Like you go to the hospital for a week, and like, you have to like, you put on medication to like chill out. Yeah, you get old real fast. So like, I was 41. So like, I'm like, wait, I'm 41. I'm old. Like it hit me like a ton of bricks. And everybody who knows me always compliments like, oh, you look young, you look like this. No. I've been tired for 5 years. Like I don't know, trust the belief. So that record comes, and I'm like, okay, this is amazing. So I pitched the boot. I pitched Angela Zimmer, who's now a friend, at the boot, which is a country website. It's like a big travel mainly in pop country. Like if you wanted to find a site where like you could learn about Luke Bryan's baby vomiting on his sweater, that's the site. And they also do like good journalism too, but like there's a better. More of it's Luke Bryan's kid vomiting on his sweater than like deep in-depth stories about country music. But it was the only thing I had. So I pitched a review of Yola to the booth, and Angela was like, yes. And then she didn't get back to me for 6 months. So I was like, okay, this sucks. And that whole time I was like listening to more stuff. I have a relationship with a bit of Southerner. So I pitched a story, this is right before COVID hit. I pitched a story where I wanted to interview Diplo about his country album he was putting out. Because I was like, Diplo's from Tupelo, Mississippi. Elvis is from Tupelo, Mississippi. So I'm like, there has to be a connection between white guys who love black music, who are both from the same place. And then COVID struck in March. And I was still listening to Elvis. Like, I love Elvis. I have a TCV channel right now. And I've loved Elvis since college, funnily enough. Like, because it was just one of those things when, like, you're trying to find somebody to, like, look like to be cool. And Elvis always looked cool. So I was like, yeah, Elvis shit. So, I've always been a fan. And so I watched a bunch of his concerts, because a bunch of his live concerts are on YouTube. And I was also listening to, like, Solomon Burke at the same time. So Solomon Burke should have been the first black country star, but instead he's known as like the inventor, literal inventor of rhythm and blues.
Yeah.
As a genre type, and it's right linked to the fact that like he got ostracized out of country. He was like the first black person to be like booted out of country because he was black. So like no, like his booking agent booked him for a bunch of Southern dates, and he went down south, and it turned out that these were like the promoters were Klansmen. And so they see the name Solomon Burke. They don't think he's a brother with like a conkling hairdo. They just think, oh, Solomon Burke. He must be like a good God-fearing young Christian man named Solomon, like the Sons of Solomon. And then this guy comes up, like screaming and hollering and, sanctified blues style country. And it's like, not so much. So he's like,
yeah, that's a problem. So yeah, I'll jump back in. And that was the thing. Like I learned about all that, and then I was listening to all these and so I was listening to Elvis, and Elvis does a live show. And in the middle of Elvis's live show, he would do these like Kiss style stage banter things, and he said something, and it was like the same thing that I swore to God. I'm like, Solomon Burke just said this in my ear like 15 minutes ago, like the same exact thing, like the same like word for word, line by line. And I knew that Elvis was a biter. Like, I grew up listening to Public Enemy. I knew Elvis was a hero to most. He didn't mean shit to me. Like, I know like, he's a biter. I get it. So I listened to Solomon Burke and I listened back to Elvis, and they basically said the same thing. And so then I started to like really look at Elvis, like his shows, like more intensely. Because I mean, the Elvis and Diplo story gets dropped at some point. Peter Southerner's like, yeah, like Diplo's people don't want him to be interviewed right now because obviously there's a global pandemic and they're not going to push this record. But I'm still stuck. Like I've been listening to Elvis to like do this epic interview. I'm gonna have Diplo for like I was gonna have Diplo for an hour. Like an hour of this man's time. The most influential producer of this generation. I'm gonna talk to him. So I was all ready. I'm like, I got all these notes. And so I'm stuck. And so then I just started watching like more stuff. And then I started to like dive back into like what was going on in country right now. And it was like not good by comparison to like every stuff I was listening to. And then I was like, well, what's the missing thing? And then I was like, then I circled all the way back around to like all the black women I listened to. And I'm like, oh, that's the missing thing. They're not pushing the pop conversation. So yeah, that's why this sucks. I mean, I have a different opinion of country now because I work in it every day. But at the time, I'm like, oh, this shit is garbage. Like it's booty. Like this is not cool. Like, so then George Floyd his life was needled from out of his body. And I was living in an attic in Northwest Washington at that time. I was like trying to get my Hemingway on, and I also wanted to be in a quiet space. So like I lived in this attic. It had a lovely like spiral staircase down into the house that was like attached to the attic. It was lovely. And I was like laid in bed. And there were like two, I'm gonna give you them, like picture this. It's like the Golden Girls. So there's like two windows. And they're like, cathedral style windows. Like they're like the round, like the oval, half ovals. And I have my TV between these two windows. And every morning I wake up, I put my TV there because every morning I wake up, I get like this like orange yellow sun. Because it was like the attic was at the height, and the sun would come up at the height, like boom, and right there you'd have like this brilliant light. I would have to set my alarm. It was great because I'm again was like very anti like loud noises and ostentatious ridiculousness. I'm trying to chill. So it's like every day the sun would come up and I'd get up. It would be great. And the day that they set the Minneapolis precinct on fire, there's like orange light, giant building on fire on television. So the whole thing is orange. And I'm laying there. And I may have drank the night before. I just developed a taste for Truly at the start of the pandemic. And then there was a restaurant that made pina coladas. They made pina coladas in a bag. So like
in a bag.
It was great. Coconut Club is no longer in existence. Shout out to Chop Chip and Adam Greenberg for making pina coladas in a bag. It was great. So I'm laid in bed and I may have been like hammered. I may have. And the whole window is orange. Like I'm looking at this and I'm like, whoa, this is really crazy. And that was the moment it hit me. I'm like, and I realized what was happening with television. It's like a race riot in 2021. So 2020. So I was like, I'm watching a race riot on TV and I'm laid up in the middle of this attic and I'm like regenerating in some way. So I'm like, oh, this is the moment. This is like the moment where like the rest of my life is made apparent to me and I have to do it. And I'm like, okay, so like it's gotta be civil rights because I'm watching this thing. Like, it really touched me. Because like that was the first time in American history we'd ever seen somebody like die on television.
Yeah.
It's the same, to me, it's the same thing as like when the monk immolates himself during Vietnam.
Yep.
When you watch it, but it's much more violent because we're American. So it's like the Michael Bay film of that. It's like, yeah, like it's out of the Terminator. That's crazy. So I'm like, okay, it's gotta be civil rights. And it was funny because I've been meaning to check in on my email to the booth, which I did every month. I never got a response, but I always would check it. Be like, hi, Angela, this is Marcus Dowling. You know, like, it's like the Troy McClure thing. Simpsons.
Yeah.
Hi, Angela, this is famous journalist Marcus Dowling. I like to write for the booth. And I get nothing back. So I sent her an email at like 9 o'clock that day. Like, hi, famous journalist Marcus Dowling. I'd like to write for you. I have these 4 pieces about race and reparations of country music that I think would be really important for you to consider. And I'd written 2 of them. So I write this, and at like 10 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock Nashville time, I get an email back from Ange. It's like, hi, Marcus, I was thinking about you. And in my head, I'm like, what Marsha was thinking about me? Like, Black people are running around the world acting crazy. You happen to know the one Black person who wants to write about country music, where a genre that people think 90% of the fans are white. And it's been a closed box of an industry for 99 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're thinking of me. Thinking of me. Who else are you thinking of? I'm like, so she's like, let's get on a call. I'm like, hell yeah, let's get on a call. Let's do this. So we call and we talked for like an hour. And we agreed I had 6 pieces. I picked 6 pieces because I'm an asshole. So I'm like, I would have written 6 pieces for you. She's like, well, let's make that like 2. I'm like, let's agree on 4. So we agreed on 4. That turned into 3. So like I wrote 3 pieces and they went mega viral. And that started my career as a country journalist. So in the midst of that, like America's healing, and there's still COVID happening. So that was weird because I was a country journalist and I'm not in Nashville. And I'm working. And the Black country thing really took off at that point because like I aggressively started trying to find as many Black people as I could in country. Because I'm like, I'm here and I'm like, and you've known this about me since college. I'm like the blackest Black person ever. Like I don't really like advertise it as such. But if you really get to know me, I'm like Black first, Black last, Black in. Oh, there's a white person. Okay, you're next. But like that's me. So I started to like find all these people, and then other people like publicists would be like, "This is the artist I represent, and they're a Black folk artist. This is a Black blues artist who makes country music sometimes. like here are all these people, and we started to create community. Um, Fast forward to December of this year when Charlie Pride died. So Charlie Pride dies, and it's like Charlie Pride is literally Black country music for 99% of the world.
Right. He was the really the I don't know, not the first, but he was like the most prominent.
Yes, he was the most prominent, and he died. And it was crazy because he died of COVID. And he was at the CMA Awards with Jimmy Allen not but 2 weeks before he died.
Wow.
In the middle of Nashville during COVID, in a ceremony that was maskless. There was no vaccine, and it was taped in a way where they just like they did the forehead scan. So like this is like pigeon technology being used for like a very public event. It was a whole bad thing. Initially, like the thing that motivated me with Charlie was like it was like to me, it was like, okay, so Charlie Pride had died from COVID. And I'm like, pardon my French, I used all the other foul language. But I was like, fuck this. so like anybody wants these words on Charlie Pride, I got all the words on Charlie Pride right now. Because like if a Black man died of COVID because of fucking Nashville, we're on. And I hadn't started like writing for anybody in particular yet, but like I was like a very busy freelancer in the country. I was writing for every journal that would accept me writing words about country music. So like I had really expanded my freelance like vision. And Andrea Williams is a phenomenal Black female writer. She's an author. She's like got a New York Times. She's got a rising New York Times bestseller. She wrote a children's book for LeBron James. So she's awesome. She got hit up by CMT to do a obit on Charlie Pride. Much to Andrea's credit, I just saw her this weekend. I got to thank her in person. She told Melissa Goldberg, who works at CMT as their head of digital, that she is a Black woman who's not the right person to write about Charlie Pride. She's like, I know a Black man who is ready to write about Charlie Pride like right now. I get a call at 11 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock ET from Melissa Goldberg. And she's like, hi, I'm Melissa Goldberg. I'm like, hi, Melissa Goldberg, how are you? I'm well. I'm like, well, who are you? And she's like, I'm the head of digital at CMT. I'm like, oh, okay, hi. CMT, Country Music Television. Hell, this is exactly the call I've been waiting for like, at that point, almost a year. So like, she's like, yeah, like we need an open on Charlie. So I quoted them in ostentatious, because that's what I was doing. And they were like, yes. And I'm like, oh, okay. It's like, you guys are owned by Viacom. Of course, like this is not strange. So I wrote it, and because it's like I knew that I put myself under the gun by being like kind of a jerk and kind of like, very upfront. I wrote that thing in like an hour. I wrote, and I'm not like a fast writer, but like when it's in my head, it comes out very quickly. So I wrote the thing, turned it in, goes up the next day, and 2 weeks later, I get a message from Melissa Goldberg. And in this 2 week period of time, I'd also like started to research CMT, and Leslie Fram is the senior executive of talent at CMT, and she's also like was this year voted by Billboard the most powerful person in country music, basically, in their power issue. She used to work in radio in the 90s, so she's the person who literally broke grunge and alt metal to the South.
Oh wow. Okay.
yeah. So she's a big deal. So I was like, okay. So I like talked to her. I talked to a bunch of people. Like, and I connected with white women finally in country who are like sympathetic to my Black women to the front push that I've been pushing. And then I wrote this thing about Charlie, and then I get a call from CMT, and they're like, well, we'd like to have you on board as like a staff writer for our editorial team if you're interested. And I'm like,
yes.
it was funny because I moved before I moved to the place where I live now, and I was like in between places. So I had like this like space, and my bed and my desk were separated by like 3 feet. So like I like leaned back in my bed, and I leaned back in my chair, and I hit my bed, and like I like fell in this way that like it was hilarious, and it looked like a pratfall, and I'll never forget it. because it was just like I was that stunned. Like it was like a natural reaction. It's like, boom, and I took the job. And since then, um, it's been amazing because it's like everything that. Okay, so you know this about me, Greg. You've known me for shit, 25 years.
Yeah, 25 years.
25 years, Jesus Christ. So like when I plan things out, I typically plan things that don't fail. Like, and I mean, a lot of the things I planned should have failed. Like, they should have absolutely failed. Like, there's 12 things I did in college that were things that I planned that should have absolutely failed because they did no good for anybody at the end of the day. So like, this was the plan that I had. I'm like, okay, so if I do anything, circles all the way back around to the thing I made the pledge to myself about civil rights. I'm like, I'm gonna effectively change the history of country. I'm gonna make country music as Black and as queer as humanly possible in 1 year's time. I'm gonna like pick and choose the pieces I write, and I'm gonna like pick and choose the places I write, and the way that I advocate for things, and make this thing happen. And since then, it's been fascinating to watch it just explode. Like I knew that, like, you know, as you like work in the genre, you know this from metal too. Like you start to learn what's coming and who's coming up, and like stuff that like the general population has no idea about. So you like know about some random metal artist in Norway
Yeah.
that's gonna get a push. And you're like, yeah, like that, oh, that kid, that kid. So people were telling me all along, they're like, yeah, there's lots of Black artists in Nashville. A lot of them are deals, and a lot of them are like getting ready to make big moves and have big things happen. So like Mickey Guyton just released a record. Kane Brown has a label and a publishing deal. Jimmy Allen is on Dancing with the Stars. Like these are things that have happened last year. And then on top of it, I'm like, okay, so where do I fit? And then it was like at the bottom, like with like Americana, which is like basically folk, blues, rock, whatever. That
Yeah.
It's all stuff that like, especially for Black artists, it's like you start off in country, but country's certainly not going to take you. So you kind of end up in this weird Americana pit. So like Allison Russell and Amethyst Kia and this woman Valerie Jean, a bunch of other Black women were making noise in Americana. So I'm like, where do I fit? I'm like, so there's a top and a bottom and a top and a bottom in two spaces. The only thing that's missing is the middle. So I'm like, okay, I have to stand here in the middle and pull all this Black stuff and all this queer stuff into the middle. I say Black and queer because it's just like the civil rights movement, where like Black liberation and gay liberation happened at the same time. And so for me, I was like, very quickly when I looked at the space and I realized that all the Black people I was working with very queer, I was like, okay, so this is going to be like civil rights. And I can't allow, I know my history, political science major. So I'm like, I know my history in this. I'm like, I can't allow for Black movement to like stop, and then for gay liberation to like take the reins and just springboard. I'm like, we can't have that. Like these things have to move together. The only way that it works in this case to be reparationally different is if these things work together. So it's been fascinating to watch. Like, I'm not tooting my own horn, but like the exact thing that I wanted to have happen has happened. And so like the middle now in country is full of like Black and queer artists just getting opportunities left and right. And on one level, like Morgan Wallen says the N-word, and one side of the country becomes very well defined, like, you know, cisgendered white men who, you know, like skull chewing tobacco and, you know, like to, you know, like do all sorts of horrible, like, you know, deplorable things. They have a hero. And that's cool. Like, that's fine. I get it. Like, I understand. I know why. I'm an American. I understand how America works. So I understand that when he did that, he like put himself in space. And yeah, he has the biggest selling album in music to get that. And that's fine. Like, cool. Because streaming allows for 10% of people to control 90% of the industry. Fine. But the other 90% that unfortunately show up like 10% on the streaming charts right now is full of all sorts of crazy people. Like there's like numerous Black artists, queer artists, and all sorts of stuff happening that is like really positive. Cool. So yeah, so that's where we're at right now. So I know that's long-winded, but
I knew that
stick
was
to a
going to be
6 to 1
long-winded, and that's what I wanted. I figured
Cool, man.
I figured this whole thing would be like 2 questions, and
I mean, you at least you know. I mean, you've known me, so you know how it's gonna go.
yeah, well, but it's really interesting to me because I mean, and I hate to phrase it like this, so apologies, but
Fine.
do you think based could this have happened if there wasn't so much emphasis on the civil rights in 2020, the things like
Not at all. No way. Literally no way in hell.
that, and that's terrible. That's a terrible impetus.
It's there's no worse or better impetus than the civil rights movement being put at the forefront of this. I always say it like this: like any success that I've had, like and I've talked to other people. I've talked to Mickey Guyton, I've talked to Kane Brown, Jimmy Allen, all those people. There's no worse impetus than civil rights being the cause of your success. But you have to get in when you get into the room, you have to be able to do the work.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, civil rights is like the reason for it is bad, but like the work has been great. Like that's the thing. Like I'm the Chet Flippo Excellence in Country Music Journalism from Rolling Stone Award winner. Like in theory, I'm the best writer in country music. Like I have a little award that says it. It's wild. Like not that I am. Like there's other writers that are far better than I am. I feel like shouts out to Andrea. Shouts out to Marissa Moss. Shouts out to Natalie Weiner. Lori Liebig's really good. Olivia Ladd's really good. Like David Cantwell. Charles Hughes. Like I can name people for days. Like that are really good. Like so, but yeah, I have the award. So like you have to do the work to that level. So like country's a funny space. When country lets you in, country could also kick you out because country is a genre that loves a hit.
Yes.
Like they love hit songs. Like country music has a different hit song top of the media base and Billboard radio charts almost every week. Like, and then once a year, there's one song that like will hit it for like 10 weeks or 20 weeks. But then otherwise, it's like a different song because country's got a million different stars. Country loves a star. So like to be a black person in country, you already have like a strike against you because you're black. And that's the truth. Like that's not saying that like it's bad or good. It's just true. Like country's been this way for 99 years.
Yeah.
So like as a black person, when you get in and you get to like have a hit, it's got to be a real like our actual hit. Like you have to like hit in a way that like you hit and stick at the same time. It's not like you're like a white writer or a white creative or a white artist where like you could have like a hit and then if you hit like top 5 for like 5 years, you still get to keep your deal, you still get to work. No, as a black person, you have to like hit and stay there. Like it's funny. I was talking to Charlie Pride's son, Dion, who's like my brother now in a lot of ways, which is wild to say, but it's true. There's a great picture of Dion and I you see on the internet. It's like coolest thing in the world. So Dion said to me once, he goes, my father had 29 number 1 singles.
Mm-hmm.
Like my father had more number 1 singles when he was on RCA than Dolly Parton and Elvis Presley.
That's crazy.
Like, and he was the best-selling artist at RCA when like RCA was the standard bearer for country music. The best-selling artist at RCA during that time is a black man. So it's like, okay, so when you hear that, you like go, okay, so like if I have to be Charlie Pride of this era and doing it in journalism and other spaces that are non-musical in the country music space, then it's like I have to be the Rolling Stone Chet Flippo Award winner. I have to write for CMT. I have to do all of this stuff at such a level that it's like undeniable. And I can't drop off. Like I can't like decide one day that I'm gonna like just write like a generic like news piece about Luke Bryan and his kid vomiting or do that for like 6 months.
Yeah.
Like I can't. Like it's not allowed because Charlie Pride had 29 number 1 hit singles. It was a better hit maker at RCA Records than Dolly Parton and Elvis Presley.
Yeah.
So I'm stuck. I'm just like, okay, well, okay.
Yeah,
Shit.
it's
like this is where I'm at.
Well, and you're touching on something that I've always really admired about you from college, which was, yeah, you're the kind of person where it's like you said, you get in the door, however you get in the door, and then once you're there, you have to excel. I mean, like, you got into Providence College, and then it's like, no, I'm not just going to sit here and be, Joe college guy, becoming.
No, like it was,
Yeah,
and
you
it
had
was
to
funny in
excel.
Providence. This is a great example, actually. So Providence College, less than 1% of Providence's population who were in Providence was African American.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, as far as being an African American male, it was like me, 10 other guys in the basketball team.
Right, exactly.
So like you already have a giant like spotlight on you. And you could do two things with that spotlight. You could be like, you could duck under it, which a lot of Black people did in Providence, like, and still do in Providence. Like, you get there and you're like, okay, I'm just gonna put my nose to the grindstone and go to class. That's what I'm gonna do. But for me, I'm like, okay, so like, if I go to this school and I'm like one of like 25 Black people, and I very quickly learned when I got to Providence, I'm like, okay, so like all these white people on my floor, save my friends, possibly even including my friends, probably know like one Black person apiece. Like, that's it. So like, you almost have to be like Superman, because you have to like figure out like, and this is inside baseball, but totally true. I've never said this before, but I'll say it to you. I guess I'll say it to the world. You have to figure out who is the Black guy that these people know. Like, is it like, was there like drug plug in high school? The guy who sold them their marijuana, was he the Black guy they knew? Was the Black guy they knew like the son of the judge in town? So is he like Carlton Banks?
Yeah.
Like, was he like the leading basketball scorer and touchdown maker for their high school sports teams? Was that Black guy? Or like, was he like the smartest kid in school? Or was he some amalgam of all of that?
Yeah.
And then once you start to like learn what it is, you're like, okay, so like, you know yourself. You're like, I'm not gonna like be any of those people, but like, I need to know who these people are so that I can already understand how they're going to respond to me. So one of the things I did in country, because I knew country music, it's fucking like, it's country, it's not gonna be easy. So like, I don't mind wearing country music clothing at all. Like, I've been wearing Western shirts since I graduated PC, like one of the first pieces I bought when I was like an actual adult. My first paycheck was like a Western shirt because I thought it was cool. So I've been doing this for a long time, so I don't mind it. Doesn't look weird to me. Like, cowboy boots don't feel weird to me anyway.
Right.
So I was like, okay, so a lot of these people know zero Black people in country. Like, I'm the first Black person that they've ever had to like work with or know in some significant way. So what I'm gonna do is, long before, this is the great joy of social media, long before I get into the room, the only thing that they're gonna know about me is that I listen to the music they like and I probably dress better than they do.
Interesting.
In a style of clothing and in a style of manner of fashion that they feel very comfortable and close to, in a very organic, human, positive way. So that's why I do what I do. Like, I've never told people that, but I'll tell you that because, you know, I've known you for a million years and I don't feel awkward in saying it. But that's the thing. And it's a huge thing, actually, because it's like, so say, for example, like I went to Americana Fest this weekend, and it's the first time that anybody in like country, roots, Americana, all these related genres have seen each other in 18 months. So like, all these people, all they know of me is the fact that I over flooded Instagram with shots of me wearing Chris Stapleton cowboy hats and every manner of Western shirt I could find. Because I mean, again, I don't mind it. Like, I love it. Like, it's cool to me. I'm like, this is dope. Like, I get to wear like Kennington Western shirts from 1975 every day if I so choose. Because I work in this music where this is perfectly legitimate and nobody's gonna blink an eye. I'm gonna have fun. So That's what I do. And so it was funny when people met me, they're like, it's like Instagram in real life. And you're the same person. You're not different. And I'm like, no, no. And so it's work. Like that's the thing. It's like you try to like find a thing and then you're like, okay, I'm gonna like understand that. And then I'm gonna add myself to it. And then everybody's gonna feel comfortable. And that's been a big part of the thing for me too, is that I and I know I'm unique in this, and I understand that in a weird sense that like a lot of white people and also like gay and trans people as well have a level of comfort around me because, well, like I've tried to become comfortable for them too. And a lot of people don't think it works both ways, but it does. Like you can't just like show up and be like, be comfortable around me, motherfucker. Like, yeah, no, you can't. You have to be willing to like take that step to be like, hey, I see you and I know you and I respect you. So because I see, know, and respect you, I'm going to offer something of myself into this conversation. So that's been a huge part of it. And I don't think enough people like realize that. I don't talk about it enough. I mean, now I am, but it's a real thing. I think that like a lot of people don't necessarily think about that when they think about like representational equity and all these things that we have to do moving forward as America. Like people don't think about it. It's like, yeah, like it would be cool if like one day we could just all get together and sit down and eat chicken wings and none of this stuff would make any difference, but it also makes a difference.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to like take a step out, be like, hey, like I'm wearing your shirt. Hey, I'm wearing your belt buckle. I know what you want to say to me, but.
Well, it's funny you bring that up because this actually ties into a conversation we had yesterday about you, which was, does Marcus just go around with a professional photographer?
Oh God, no,
Okay.
no. I wish. I mean, I do work with a lot of professional photographers. That's one of the things is the higher up you get in doing this stuff, like for me, it's like you have to reflect it in a manner that feels almost like it's the Superman thing again. It's like if you're going to make a superhuman thing happen that is unprecedented and has no like standard, you have to be willing to like elevate the thing at points to a level where people who operate traditionally in a superhuman space, which white people in country music do this all the time. Like, you know, Kelsey Ballerini's on tour wearing a diamond-studded cowboy hat. Like, you know, like Carrie Underwood looks like Carrie Underwood every single damn day. Like every pop country guy has a six-pack abs or like perfect teeth or something. I have none of that. So like the one thing I can do is I can learn how to edit photos. I could also like be aggressive about anytime I'm in public, even when I'm with like my friends or like people dating or whatever, like like everybody just knows now. Like if I leave the front door, I'm typically ready to be shot because I'm this committed to like what I'm doing professionally. And I also understand the tenor of what the public presentation has to be, from the words to the imaging to everything. And it's all human to me. I'm not like sacrificing my humanity in some way to like become some other kind of person and losing myself in the process. A lot of people think that. Like a lot of my friends in DC who, you know, were around me for EDM and around me for doing like stuff in Latin dance and whatever. They're like, Marcus, you lost yourself. I'm like, no, I'm still the same person. Like at some point, the Western shirts are gonna pop out. Like I said to someone recently who's like worked with me in the Latin dance space for years. They're like, you look like a vaquero. And I'm like, not really. Like the Western shirts were always in my closet. Always. always in my closet. Like I just never pulled them out. You know?
It, nothing you do ever strikes me as being outside of your character. You know what I mean? Like,
no, it's not. You know me for 25 years. So.
Exactly. Like, and but it's interesting when you talk about this because, taking your experience out of it, just in general, people think country music is like, oh, down home, salt of the earth, blah 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 blah. But Nashville, and you can speak to this more than me, Nashville is such a huge corporate business.
Nashville is Manhattan on steroids.
Exactly.
Like,
and it's image centered, and
yes,
it's so image centered, and it's so meticulously calculated. Like, the way you present yourself as an artist, it's not, and I mean, and what little knowledge I have of it, like, it seems like it's been like that for a while too, because you had like Willie Nelson never getting into the Grand Ole Opry because he was country, but he wasn't country. And it's like, it's this
no, gosh, no, it's true.
It's this
so
cookie
like,
cutter thing.
Yeah, so for me, it's funny you mentioned that because I do two things very well. I do country and western. So like I always say it's like the country stuff is like, okay, so it's like bling bling, flashy, whatever. And I also do western, which for me is like very much not that. So those are the only two images you get. You get country, you get western. Now it's funny because I was just down in Nashville for Americana Fest. And now I'm blending in some other pieces. People got excited. It's funny. I put on a suit for the first time. Like a meticulously tailored suit at that. Shout out to Emily Blumberg at Not Standard for hooking a brother up. But like, yeah, like I'm like, okay, so I'm doing a panel at Americana Fest. I'm doing 2 panels at Americana Fest in the same day in a 3-hour span. So I'm like, we're gonna pull out the suits. Now we're gonna show people like what business looks like, because it's not this fun shit that we've been doing of wearing cool shirts and walking around in public and wearing cool boots and doing this other stuff. Like, now we're gonna show people we're down to business. And, I put the suit on and everybody's like, you're wearing a suit. And it's a real suit. My God. And it's like, yeah, well, the Western shirts are real too. Like, it's all real now. I said to someone, I was like, y'all let me in the room. You should have never done that. I've been thinking about this for way too long. And like, just when you think you got me figured out, I'm like 5 steps ahead. And it's funny now that I say that with like the Black country evolution. We had my friend Holly G. She hit me up on Twitter, and then she sent me an email. She runs a site called Black Opry. It's kind of become a movement, and so I've been saving money for the first 5 pieces I wrote about country. Go back all the way back in the story. I saved my money, so I took all the money and I saved it, put it away in an account. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to touch it, because I'm like, one day I'm going to need this money to do something significant to advance this movement that I'm in. And I knew this. I'm like, I know I'm going to have to do this, and I know that like I wanted to do it in a way that would be like wholly fucked for a certain subset of the country population. Not that I'm mean or angry, but it's that whole, because the Fugees just came back. I can use this actual quote, just the actual quote, and it'll make sense. And I won't just say it and sound like I'm like saying something especially foul. So there's a song called Zealot by the Fugees, where Lauryn Hill says, after all my logic and my theory, I add a motherfucker, so you ignorant hear me.
Yeah.
So that was the moment. I was like, all right, but it's time to add a motherfucker so that country can actually hear me. I'm going to take this money that country paid me, and I'm going to pay it ahead for Black and queer artists in country, specifically. We have Valerie Ponzio, Veronique Madrano, a couple other brown artists who are now involved, which I think is dope, because like that gets into a whole other subset of the conversation that I really want like Mexican Americans especially to have about how country is, pillaged, tequila, namely tequila, tacos too.
Yes.
You go to Miranda Lambert's restaurant on Broadway, and you're like, oh God, it's tacos and tequila all the time, and some wine, but mainly tacos and tequila. And this woman is very white. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a lot. So, but anyway, so I took that money and I invested it into an Airbnb and some photo shoots. Because styling and managing this thing. And we were able to put like 20 Black and queer artists like on the map just this past weekend. And I felt really good about that.
That's amazing.
Because it was the moment where like it all came full circle. So like it's funny, it was very specific when you said the date that you wanted to do the podcast, because I was like, okay, this will be good because it's like my trip around the sun is done. The first part of what I wanted to do was done. And now it's like we're running. Like Black Opry had a house. Like Holly has a thing, and like I have a thing, and I'm doing a country. And now there's like a bunch of other Black artists who like all came together in the same house, and they all have things that they're doing, and now they do it on a higher level because we blasted that thing out across Americana Fest, the first time the country and Roots in Americana had gotten together in 18 months. And there was something very, very different about this time, that country Roots in Americana got together that was not there before. It was like the only thing everybody talked about the whole weekend was like, did you see this Black Opry house? Did you see these Black people like doing Roots music? Did you see all the Black women on stage at the Americana Fest, at the Americana Awards? Did you see that? How do you feel about that? And everybody's asking the same question. It's great. So like I'm excited. It's cool. Like it's really cool because now it's like this thing that I thought about in an attic and had thought about after like losing my mind as an idea, like actually works. So like now, and it's funny because also I'm at a place like spiritually, personally, physically, emotionally, where I'm like back to normal again. Like I've been like I have a therapist and I've been like putting that back together too. So like I haven't felt this clear-minded and together since probably, and you'll laugh at this because you were there that day, but since the day I graduated from college.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Like I haven't felt this like mentally together. I mean, so funny story there. God, I'll take you to the moment when I knew that everything was like going way off the rails. So like the morning I graduated from college, my mom walked into our apartment and I was laying in bed with my girlfriend at the time, and I was 12 sheets to the wind I hadn't packed. My mom saw me naked in bed with the woman I was dating, and I had not packed. So like at that moment, I knew that everything past that moment in my life was going to be like a real problem because I was in no way prepared for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And it's been a 21-year process to like figure it out and get an idea of like what I want to do next. And I'm here now. It's crazy. It's cool. Like I'm finally together. It's wild.
And helping to contribute something really important to, I mean, the country music genre, but like, but even more than that, just helping to contribute some sort of cultural evolution.
I mean, it's crazy because like I always knew that was the thing since like 96. You were in Society Organized Against Racism. Like since then, like I always knew that there was something. Like I'm like, hey, I don't know what it is, but I'm supposed to be doing something in this space. And the way that I see it is very different. And most people don't give it the time of day. Like my vision of the world is very different than most people's vision of the world. And I've always like had this progressed understanding of like race, gender, society, government, interaction. I always have. And it's been in a part of every single part of my life. And everything that I've failed at in my life has been due in some large part to somebody vastly misunderstanding my level of commitment to what the future of the world looks like.
Right.
So this is the first time in my life that I've ever presented my view of what the world looks like in the future to somebody, to a group of people. And they've all said, yes, that's exactly what we wanted. And please open the door for us and please let us come in. We'll take care of everything else. And we're all logical, clear thinking, intelligent, professional people who have nothing but like good, kind meaning and like decent desires in the world to do this thing moving forward. So it's like, oh, okay, that's weird, but I'll take it, obviously. So it's cool. It's really cool. And I'm like incredibly happy.
I just want to jump in to say thank you for listening, and here are the ways that you can support us. Subscribe to The Color of Air on your favorite podcast app like Apple, Stitcher, Radio Public, or Spotify, and be sure to rate and review. Also follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/retcongreg. Join our Patreon at patreon.com/Ret Con Industries, where we have 3 monthly subscription tiers of $1, $5, and $10. Depending on which tier you choose, you will have your name listed in the credits for every future podcast and music release, as well as access to bonus audio and video content, Bandcamp discounts, and exclusive merchandise through the Ret Con Swag Club. Finally, please check out all the music up for sale at retconindustries.bandcamp.com. And now, back to the podcast. I do want to go back to one thing, which you kind of touched on a little bit, but I'm kind of interested.
Yeah, no problem. Let's run back.
You brought up Elvis.
Oh, absolutely. The king.
And so it's hard. It's hard to have. He's so problematic in certain ways, but also so. If he didn't happen, there's so much that transpired because of him.
God, so I'm glad you bring up.
Yeah,
Elvis.
how do you reconcile? Like you said, that he was a biter. I mean,
man, I have a fight with Elvis that I've been having for like 18 months. I've been struggling with Elvis for 18 months. So one of the things that I've been doing along the way, and it's like a personal thing, but it's like not, it's like a very real thing, is like reclaiming parts of Black culture that white people stole. Like, because, okay, so the thing in country right now is that like country's obsessed with like modern Black culture. Whatever Black people are doing right now, like this very moment, country's like obsessed with like mirroring that. Because it's like, it's eye to eye, one to one. It's the one part about this movement that's fascinating on the pop side, is that like the closer Black people get to the sun, the faster white people melt us. And they commodify us into like, little plastic boxes that they sell to their white people. So that's one side. Like, I feel I'm happy that we got an album out. I'm happy that Kane Brown deal. I'm happy that Jimmy Allen's on Dancing with the Stars and is a superstar. But it's also the closer you get to the sun, the faster white people can melt you down, turn you into a little plastic box and sell to white people. And again, that's that on one level, that's cool. White people are willing to commodify Black people. But I also now am obsessed with looking backwards through all the points of history, especially because country's so good at mirroring what Black people do. And looking at all those other moments when country music looked at what Black people were doing and literally just like squashed it into the ground and turned it into a little box and then positioned it as something that they do. So and a lot of the clothing choices and stuff like that is directly related to that. Like directly related to that. Like I wonder when I'll see a picture of somebody, I'll see a picture like David Allen Coe, and I'll be like, nah, son, you can't wear that shirt. Like, yoink. So when it comes to Elvis, I wrote a piece for Medium. I do a lot of writing for Medium, for Level, their African American publication, where I wrote about reclaiming Black history from Elvis. And I did the first run of photos I did during quarantine, when everybody started to notice that I was having way too much fun during quarantine, taking pictures and posting them on the internet. Was directly in relation to Elvis and trying to take some part of Elvis back from Elvis. So I'm obsessed with high collar shirts because Elvis was obsessed with high collar shirts. So I bought a bunch of high collar shirts. I know I sound weird, but you know me for 25 years. I'm weird as hell. So other people are just getting used to this, which is fun. So like I went and bought a bunch of high collar shirts. The only place that makes really good high quality shirts is this place called Hawes and Curtis, based out of London. So like I had to airlift shirts. It's like when you think about it in retrospect, it's this whole process. It sounds crazy, but it's actually far crazier when you look at what I did with it than I could even imagine. So I took these photos in these high collar shirts and I mirrored Elvis's poses in the shirts. And I'm like, all right, I'm taking that back. And then that worked because obviously my country music career moved in relation. So I'm like, okay, shit, I'm gonna do some other stuff. I'm gonna steal some work on this shit. So I looked at all right, how do the pants look? All right, finally found me. And the UK's been wonderful for this. There's a place called Adam Retro. They have the right kind of bell bottom pants that Elvis was wearing in the Vegas era. So and luckily I'm very small, so I can mirror that, put those on, and finally continuing my battle with Elvis and reclaiming parts of Black history that this man stole. I get to go to Graceland at the end of this week.
Oh, okay.
Because I am scheduled to go to Memphis to cover the Mempho Fest, and I'm excited. God, shout out to the Mofo, shout out to Mark Rivera, because the damn thing is called the Mempho Fest.
I know. I was gonna say.
I have to tell Mark this. It's great, right?
Yeah, that's amazing.
But it's amazing, right? Yeah. So anyway, I get to go down and go to Graceland. And that's going to be enormous because given the nature of what I have stated to myself and also to the world about what a lot of this thing is for me, to be able to go to Graceland and walk on his lawn and walk in his hallway and look at his cars and the whole deal and be able to just go, yoink, yoink, yoink. If you don't think I'm gonna take a million pictures of Graceland, crazy.
Yeah. You have to.
Yeah, because it's literally at this point, given a success of what happened at Americana Fest. I'm here now. Not that I was gonna leave, but I'm really here now. I'm in bed with country music. I'm in bed with roots in Americana. This change that I wanted to see happen is happening. So now it's all right, if I'm really here, then the timing couldn't be more perfect. So I'm I get to go and I get to do the thing and actually touch and feel Elvis's real legacy. And that means a lot because it's okay, so now we're gonna really have fun. Because now I'm eye to eye, one to one with the man. And moving forward, now it's I can actually this is all like a prologue, prelude to the actual stuff I get to do. So it's very exciting.
Well,
couple that with interviewing Randy Travis.
Yep.
And the timing of that coming out probably around or after the same time that I go to Graceland. It's a real springboard of stuff. So it's this is all crazy time right now.
Well, it is. And I mean, I remember when I went to Graceland 20 12 years ago, I think, because we went to Memphis. And first of all, we stayed at the Heartbreak Hotel, which is down at the end of Lonely Street. They literally manufactured a new street called Lonely Street and put a hotel at the end called the Heartbreak Hotel. And I'm just like, and they drive you around in a pink Cadillac. It's just, it's ridiculous, but it's ridiculous when you see Graceland. Because have you ever been there before?
No, this is my first time.
It's you really get a sense of kind of the disparity of it all. I think that was my main takeaway from going down there, is like you see the extravagance with which Elvis lived, but then you see the poverty of the neighborhood that's around Graceland. And you read about, like you see all of his records, his gold records, his flashy outfits, his everything. But then you go to a different museum and you see, like, here's the original version of Hound Dog, by I apologies, I forget the name of the artist, but they profile the artists who Elvis bit from. And like they weren't living, they're not in Graceland.
Not even close.
They're in that other area. And it's really it's a really kind of an interesting thing, because I kind of walk away from it being like, yeah, I like Elvis. I grew up on Elvis. My parents loving that era of music.
Of course.
But it's one thing to enjoy the music, but it's also, you have to not necessarily make peace, but it's like you have to be honest with yourself about what generated this music, and it's a really interesting thing to have that, to see that kind of history in front of you.
So I'm looking forward to that. Like, you're the second person to tell me that, so I'm excited. Like, it's like I'm doing that, I'm doing Beale Street.
Oh, Beale Street's awesome.
Doing that, Beale Street. I'm also going to the Stax Museum.
Yes.
And I'm going to Al Green's church.
Oh wow, okay, that's amazing.
Yeah. I've got my fingers crossed, and also I'm going to the High Record Studios where Al recorded, and like it's still open. And Willie Mitchell, the architect of, like that side of the Muscle Shoals Memphis blues connection, like I'm friends with his grandson, so I get to get the tour and go around. That'll be fun. So no, I'm doing the whole thing.
Okay, good.
I'm looking forward to it. Like, that'll be, so it's like, and again, the timing of all this is crazy. Like, in my head, it's the exact timing I had. And you've lived in my head. You've worked with me creatively before. Living in my head is a nightmare. But like, to have the world operating in my headspace and my timeline is frightening. But it's amazing. So I'm excited. Like, it's a good time to be me.
Yeah.
So and I'm very cognizant of that. So it's cool.
Well, the two other things from my Memphis trip that were a big takeaway for me was because we went for my mother-in-law's 60th birthday at the time.
Yeah.
And she was an Elvis fan. So, and I just remember that the whole big thing was we wanted to get a cake that had Elvis on it, like a imprint of Elvis on it.
Yeah.
We had whoever, I forget who was, I think it was her father or whatever, had to call the estate of Elvis and get specific permission to use his face.
Of course.
On a cake that 5 people are going to see.
Of course.
And you see the level of like how, wherever he is on the list of like top earning dead celebrities, he's always
the guy.
He's always going to be at that top of that list. And then, well, the other thing too I thought was funny was when we're looking at the different movie posters, and I see the poster of I forget which movie it is, where he's basically playing a Middle Eastern guy. and this is like 2009, so it's just like in the middle of everything we're going on, and I was just kind of like, oh, that's why they hate us.
Yes.
Is that specifically?
Like, so you get why this is so important to
I
me.
do.
Like,
I do.
It's such a thing. It's such a thing to me. Like, it's such a
it's
thing.
it's so well, it's just so important to understand these things and to, I mean, like, even, I mean, for me, it's like, I remember, you'll find this kind of funny in a sad way, of course, but um so there was this big movement in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, the Norwegian black metal scene.
Yes.
And their whole thing was like from the reclaiming the pagan rights from the of their homelands from in Scandinavia from the Christians. And so it's like burning churches and Satanism and you know killing people. There are people who died
Right.
and all this
Yeah.
horrible stuff or whatever. And and cut to, I mean, it still exists. Well, now you have different artists doing it.
Yeah.
But what was interesting is one of those four guys of that decided, he said, well, I am going to do music now in a completely different way, because I can't do heavy metal, because heavy metal comes from rock and roll comes from black people.
Yep.
And it's just
I
like,
get it.
taking your racism to that level is just, and it's just like, it's like you said with the banjo. It's just like,
Yeah.
it's like people just don't realize, like, I can't think of any, and when you bring up like the gay rights and the black and the
Yeah.
civil rights, and you think about it, it's just like you think about um black, the black origins of jazz, the black origin, and it's funny, I was actually thinking about this, that it's like, you think of all the terrible stereotypes, right,
Right.
that were prevalent in the 1900s, or above, past night, I mean, before that too.
Yeah.
But you think of, like, you hear about the black artists who would play shows and then would have to leave because they couldn't technically be there, and you see
Right.
this. But then in the stereotype of, like, kind of the less intelligence, you know what I mean, like those
Right. Of course.
horrible
Yeah.
horrible
Mhm.
stereotypes. And but at the same time, jazz is one of the most highest regarded intellectual forms of
Right.
music. It's like
Exactly.
the
Exactly.
what had, in order to play jazz correctly, and I don't, but in order to really communicate in that idiom, you have to have an incredible amount of technical knowledge and practice and understanding. And so you look at that, you look at that I was like, oh, hip hop, I don't know, but but then
Yeah.
studying hip hop, and you realize what they were doing is, like, yes, they were stealing beats from other songs, but they were manipulating them, and they were, and to be able to match up a drum machine to that, and then be able to create a cohesive thing, that takes an incredible amount of talent. So it's just like,
Yeah.
and yeah, and like rock and roll and country and everything, and all the history, it's just, it's a really
I'll
interesting thing.
I was on a panel at Americon Fest and about critical race theory and understanding it through the lens of like storytelling and being a writer and writing in an era where people are being willing to position Black stories as essential stories. That's like part of the critical race theory thing. So I was like, I explained it like this. I'm like, colonization does not equate with intellectualism. But for white people in music, it does. So I'm like, the double unbinding for me is like, I have to unbound first race from music. So I have to take the white colonization of music away. And then I have to put Black intellectualism in the place of the white intellectualism that made white people feel okay with colonizing music. So essentially what happens then, so people have to understand, like, I have a long-term goal for all of this, like very long. This is just the point where we're like taking the white cap off Black music and just being like, sorry, there's a 100-year thing you guys did, taking all of our songs and singing them again, and then singing songs that were created with the inspiration of our songs and all that. No, It's done. So then it's like now we're doing the Black recapping of that, which God, I don't know how long it's gonna take. I have a 25-year career probably in this. Like I might die at 75, who knows, 80, whatever. So I have like a 35-year career with this. But then the legacy point is going to be what happens when you get to re-intellectualize this Black music with Black minds at the forefront, with gay and queer minds at the forefront. Because again, Black and queer work well together. And I didn't really understand that. It's an important point. I didn't understand that until really getting into like this country thing and understanding like what marginalization feels like for people. Not that I understand like what queer marginalization feels like, but I've talked to enough queer artists about their level of like marginalization. So like white lesbians who work in country and Americana, because they run the thing. Like Brandy Carlisle is one of the best artists on planet Earth.
Mm-hmm.
A white queer woman like runs the thing. And when you talk to like people who work with her, people are like, I've talked to a number of the high women. So like her like super group.
Yeah.
Like Natalie Himby's a friend. So like you talk and it's like, okay, so like this is what marginalization can look like, but this is what like semi-inclusion, though you're completely marginalized, which is a weird thing that only happens in country and Americana. Like we're gonna marginalize you, but when you put out music, we're gonna laud you as a genius.
Okay.
Like you're weird, but we get it. Like we understand. Like cis men have run this thing for a long time, and culture being what it is, and America's fucked up. So we get it. But like I'm like, okay, so the next level of that is like when we cap it back with Black empowerment at the top. Then we move forward into okay, so what does that look like with like Black and queer intellectualism in theory as well, and social theory guiding it? I'm like, oh my God, this is the thing. So like I look at it and I look at the work that I'm doing right now, like literally right now. Like when I get done with this conversation, I have to transcribe your interview with Mickey Guyton that adds to this process. Like, okay, so this is the beginning of what's gonna hopefully be like another century-long arc.
Yeah.
And that's super exciting to me. It's like, okay, so like the work we're doing like right now defines a century of music. And because music defines culture, it essentially defines a century of culture. And it's like, okay, so cool. Like you didn't like the Orange Man?
Mm-hmm.
Tight. Hang out.
Yeah.
Tight. You didn't like him? Hang out. Music's got you. Maybe not like right now, but like in 5 years, I swear to God.
And so, and I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about, because I wasn't paying attention, so I didn't really understand much about this, but Little Nas X. I mean, like he plays an important part in this too, because
Nas X is great because Nas X figured out, because Nas X didn't know this. That's the one great lesson. I leave a space in all the work I do for people who are coming to this knowledge sight unseen, like culture unknown. Because this shit radicalizes you. If you don't know about this and you learn about it like one day, if you just woke up one day and you learned that like America was a lie, and you're like in any way like politically or socially progressively minded, which Lil Nas X is, you're like, wait, so this whole thing, this whole country, 300 million people who all do various things, and you have a constitution, it's based on whatever. It's all a lie. So like the Constitution is a document that's made by white men who just want to protect their land and their guns. Women aren't mentioned in the document for over 150 years.
Mm-hmm.
Like women just don't exist. Like so it's all this stuff. And then you're like, wait. So like because I made a country song, I antagonize the world. And anytime I make a country song, henceforth, I will antagonize the world. But as long as I know that there's a movement now, that this is one of the great joys of my life. He just posted this on Twitter yesterday, that he wants to make country music again. And I love it because it's like, he is aware, and I feel very, very good about this. He is aware that there is a movement that will support the music that he is making, which didn't happen the first time he tried to accidentally make a country song. And the country music establishment was like, no, you're not allowed. Now, the country music establishment who wants to make a country song, he covered Jolene for BBC Radio 1, and it was genius. Like, of all the songs, Don't Take My Man, and I'm gay, so when I say don't take my man,
I really mean
the man that I'm having sex with. And there was that video where I had sex with the devil man. So y'all get it. It's like a circle there. We've gone full circle with that video. Me having sex with the devil man. Like, don't take my devil man away from me. All sorts of all sorts of country music dog whistles going on. But the thing is that anytime he does it from here forth, because there's a movement that I had a large part in putting the kerosene on. And then like now it's like whenever he makes a song in country has to respect it. I wrote about it for CMT. Like I wrote about the Jolene cover for CMT. The black writer wrote about the Jolene cover by the gay black man for CMT, Country Music Television, which essentially is the New York Times of country music.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a big thing.
Yeah,
so like,
huge.
And moving forward, because of the nature of the thing and everything that's happened, country music has to stop and look at the gay black man and say, oh, well, okay, it's time for the gay black man again. We can't say the word can't say that word.
Yeah.
Certainly can't say that word. Can't do this. They tore down our statue, so we can't have anywhere to gather either. So we just have to sit.
Yeah.
Isn't that special? It's what it is.
It's crazy to me because, I think the other thing too about Nashville, which I really got a sense of being there, is it's also the Christian music capital of the world.
Oh, absolutely. Michael W. Smith and the whole crew, the God Squad.
Yeah. So it's, so not only is Lil Nas X like pushing those, antagonizing the country music fans, but he's antagonizing the Christian music fans because he's like, here's some sneakers that I have that have blood in them and pentagrams on them for your kids to wear.
It's fun. And it's only funny, right? So like, I am blessed to be friends with the Fisk Jubilee singers. And it's a weird time in Nashville because like the best gospel group in Nashville is like the traditional, like embedded home of gospel music, which is Black artists. And it's the best artists making gospel music in Nashville are the Fisk Jubilee singers, who are the ancestral godparents of all things American gospel music. Mm-hmm. And because Fisk University still exists, the Fisk Jubilee singers will always exist, and now they're really good. And because of the nature of the time and the movement, they are at the forefront of the genre, and the stuff they're making is like really, really good. Which is, it's crazy. It's like, it's another part to add to all of this stuff that's going on. Shout out to Shannon Sanders, shout out to Leon Timbo, the lead singer of the Fisk Jubilee Singers, who's releasing an Americana record. I hung out with him this week. He's amazing. Shannon Sanders is the guy. Like, it's wild. Like, Shannon Sanders is an executive at BMI.
Yeah.
So the leader of all music publishing, Black man, producing the Fisk Jubilee Singers, who are the ancestral godfathers of gospel music.
Yeah.
And gospel and country now, because everybody in Nashville is friends. They get along really well. So it's the levels of this are like mind-blowing. When I sit down and think about it, something I get tired. And I'm already tired. So I'm more tired. It's fun. It's fun.
Well, this kind of like leads a little bit into, so I just had two more kind of quick questions.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, they won't
no
be
problem.
quick, both your answers, I'm sure, but that's all right.
We're here.
Yeah, exactly. So given the nature of how things are, especially the way you talk about, the commoditization of Black artists in country, like you said, like getting put into boxes and everything like that.
Yeah. You fly too close to the sun, and then they make you a plastic box and sell you a white.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, is there now a Black outlaw country movement?
Oh, absolutely. We had them in the house. It's great. Like there's two different black outlaw country movements actually. So there's a lot of black artists in country. There's a lot of them actually, like who are actual cowboys. So like my friend Aaron Vance. Aaron Aaron Vance is a black outlaw country artist who has a 9 to 5 shoot job, works at a distillery making Tennessee whiskey. Like he wears a hat and he has like the snakeskin boots, or he had ostrich on at the house, and he wears his vest everywhere. He's only missing like a holster. It's amazing. And then there's also like in the outlaw movement, there's also like people who come from R&B backgrounds whose parents grew up on country music because they're all children of the 60s and 70s who make country music. So there's a guy named Tony Evans Jr. who, if you looked at him, he looks like Genuine and Trey Songz had a child somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's like that guy, and you would look at him and be like, "Oh, he's the next R&B star." Then he starts strumming a guitar, and he's got that twang, and it's like syrup. He's like, so it's like imagine if you had Genuine and Trey Songz, but he's sang like George Strait.
Mm-hmm.
So that's some outlaw shit, really,
Yeah.
like. So there's that movement too, and there's a lot of them. And the funny part about them that's even crazier. It's even crazier. We haven't even touched on this, and we shouldn't because this is another conversation we'll have. We'll have this one in 18 months.
Okay,
18
that
more
sounds
months.
good.
So yeah. We'll come back to this 18 months. This will actually be a thing. So artists like Tony, if you look at his Instagram, it's full of like, hey God, I love Tony. I'll say it. Like white Karens who like look at Tony like he's the most attractive man that ever existed on God's green earth because he's the perfect triangulation of everything they love about conflating race with their unique social backgrounds and the music that their parents love. So he'll post like the thirst trap photo. I'm shirtless and I'm wearing my cowboy hat and I'm singing my song about taking you to dinner. And the girls are like, "Oh my God, Tony, you're the finest man on planet Earth. Oh my God, come to my town. Oh my God." And he knows it. He's not unaware. He's not stupid. Like the thing about social media is that it's transparent. So he knows. And he plays into it. He totally plays into it. Like the man has an S curl. Who has an S curl? Tony Evans does. I haven't had an S curl since 1994. But I have.
Yeah.
And there's Tony. He comes to the house, takes his hat off, takes his hood off, and there it is, falls out. And I'm like, oh, this man really sings country music and looks like this and has an S curl.
That's amazing.
And these girls love him. So it's funny because that's the next issue because then we're gonna get into a point where like all of these attractive black men who are outlaws, because Kane Brown already has it and Jimmy Allen already has it too. But they're not like Jimmy Allen's a skull chewing good old boy from Delaware, and Kane Brown like wears Nike Dunks and wears like trucker hats and is already married with kids. So like he can't really play into it. But there's a lot of like young single attractive black men who sing country music who have 6-pack abs and mouthful of teeth, and that's gonna be fun for getting past, that's a different kind of criminalist.
That's amazing. And
yeah, that's so there's an outlaw movement. There's two separate ones in one.
That's
And don't get me started on like black lesbians, like black lesbian women who like or black lesbian femmes who do this, like Amethyst Kia, Chris Matthews, like there's a bunch of them. And their thing is even greater because like their liberation is aggressive and it sounds like rock and roll that like is tinged with the blues. And white people love that shit. And then when they realize that the person singing it is like a dreadlock lesbian from the hills of Tennessee.
mm-hmm. Well,
that's good time.
Yeah, it's all about I mean, music, art. I shouldn't just say music. Like there's always going to be an aspect of art. There's always the pop, commodity of art, but then there's
Yep.
also the confrontational art,
Yeah.
and this is what it's always something that needs to happen, and this
Yeah,
is
and both sides are running right now. That's the crazy part, like about empowering everybody. Like, and I could say that, and it's true. Like the one thing that I've done in the last 18 months is empower a lot of people who've never been empowered before. And to watch people who have never been empowered before have power and have real, like calculable, like demonstrative, like actual power. Like my friend Adia, she released a gothic country album about being mad as a Black woman that white people are claiming their success on her back.
oh geez.
And she is college, she is multiple degree college educated.
What's her name?
Adia
Oh,
Victoria,
okay.
a Southern Gothic, to correct. And you know, I interviewed her for CMT. And she said on for CMT.com that if I'm going to stand in the kitchen and fry this chicken, I'm no longer frying it for you, I'm frying it for myself.
Amazing.
CMT.com.
Wow.
I like stood up on that, like, yes, I wrote that. She said it and I wrote it. It's great. It's great. Great.
And
Great.
and given
Wow.
well, and the last thing I'll kind of tie up with all this is, given everything that's gone on over the last 18 months or whatever, I know you talk about like starting movements that have ripple effects over time, but
Yeah.
in terms of your own personal career, when are we going to see a book? It seems to me like there's a book in the making here, or a documentary film.
I'm working on a book right now. So that's the thing. Like, very few people know, but I'm working on a book right now about cultural appropriation
Okay.
of music. Basing it within country. I've already done some research. So the funny part is, like, people always ask, like, they're like, you travel a lot. Like, why are you traveling so much? Why do I see you here and here and here? So while I was down in Tampa, I spoke with some session players and engineers who had a hand to play in the white commoditization of the funk edge disco. So like people who played with Casey and the Sunshine Band and with the Bee Gees and were responsible for that Miami sound. So that's been fun. The book is gonna be based in country, of course, because I have to base all these things in country now just because of the nature of the thing. But there's gonna be touches of that, touching disco, touching the house. Probably gonna get into hip hop. I'm crossing my fingers for a connection with Vanilla Ice, because I think that'll be a fun conversation. Because it's funny because Vanilla Ice does a lot of work on like the more ratchet side of the white country hip hop like space,
Mhm.
which is the thing. Him and a rapper named Fogiato Blow. Fogiato Blow is signed to Maybach Music Group. So Rick Ross is making money in country, and I think that's dope. And when I realized that that was a thing, I was like, yeah, I'm in the right place. If the boss is here already, and he said nothing about it to anybody. Why would he openly tell, very Black people who listen to Maybach Music Group that I have an artist who is white as the day was and lives in, redneck America and makes country rap songs. So I'm looking at that as a hook wing for that. The book is being pitched right now.
Okay.
Got my fingers crossed. So yeah, that's the thing. I'm excited for that. It's the thing I'll talk about a lot, but you got it out of me.
Okay.
So,
Well, yeah, you don't have to go into.
so it's happening. Like, it's really happening, and it's a real thing. Like, it's an actual real thing that I've had like meetings about and like talked about and like broken down with people and like had to like, had people like suggest to me that like this is gonna be like the moment. So like this is it's bananas. I'm just like, okay, I'm glad to be here for it.
Yep.
But it's like, whoa, okay, like every move you make at this point, it's like on the cusp of like a much bigger thing. So it's wild. And yeah, so there is a book. There's a bunch of other bigger stuff that's like knocking at the horizon. I'll say that it's funny, like literally, I couldn't have put this interview more for perfect time. It's scary.
Yeah.
In the next 90 days, my life is going to change. I'll say that because it's true. And I'm excited for that. And I've worked for 25 years to have this happen. And I could have died 100 times in that process. And a lot of horrifying things transpired in my life in the midst of that. Some of which you were present
Yeah.
for. But to be able to be here and be, like clear-minded and gracious and able to accept good things, I'm incredibly glad, and I'm hopeful for the future. It's going to be good.
That's awesome. Well, and that's a perfect.
Yeah, man.
That's a perfect way to end. That's a perfect stopping point.
Do what I do.